Hello and welcome to this lesson on an introduction to Roman numerals and figured bass. At this point, if you've not watched the previous lessons on chords and inversions, I would encourage you to watch those lessons now, as it will help you to understand the following material. In front of you, you can see a C major scale. This scale, of course, has no sharps or flats. Underneath each note is the name of the note, followed by the scale degree. In the key of C major, C would be the first note, D would be the second note, E would be the third note, F would be the fourth note, and so forth and so on. As the last note is a C again, we could also think of it as the first scale degree again as it loops around. Roman numerals are used to refer to a chord that has been built on a certain scale degree. You can see the root of each of these chords contains a note from the C major scale highlighted in red. The chord built on the first note of the C major scale is marked with the Roman numeral 1. The note built on the second scale degree is marked with the Roman numeral 2. The third note with a 3 in Roman numerals, right up through 7. When we get back to the C again, you'll notice that it is marked with a Roman numeral 1, to note that this again is the first note of the C major scale. If you have a keen eye, you will notice that some of these Roman numerals are in uppercase and some of them are lowercase. Uppercase Roman numerals refer to major chords, whereas lowercase Roman numerals refer to minor chords. Diminished chords are represented by lowercase Roman numerals followed either by the letters dim for dim or followed by a little circle that is written with a superscript. Augmented chords are represented using uppercase Roman numerals followed by either the letters AUG for augmented or by a little plus sign. In a major key, so long as none of the notes have been altered with accidentals, chords built on the scale degrees 1, 4, and 5 will always be major. Chords built on the scale degrees 2, 3, and 6 will be minor, and chords built on the scale degree 7 will be diminished. This applies regardless of what major key you are in. As we move on to our next example, I want to make a note that all of the examples that we are looking at today are assuming that we are in a major key. This example takes place in E major, as evident from the 4 sharps in the key signature. We can see that the E major scale has been written out in red, using the notes starting from E and ending on E, with a chord being built on each scale degree. The root of each of these chords is a scale degree. However, now that we are in the key of E major, the first scale degree is E, so you can see that the first chord built on an E is marked with the Roman numeral 1. In the key of E major, F sharp is now 2, G sharp is now 3, A is now 4. It is important to remember that the Roman numerals are relative to the key that you are in. However, just like in the key of C major, you can see that the chords built on the scale degrees 1, 4, and 5 are major, 2, 3, and 6 are minor, and 7 is diminished. Once you understand how the Roman numerals function, the figured bass notation is simply the numbers that are used to communicate the distance between the other notes from the bass note of the chord, or the lowest note of the chord. This helps give us information as to the inversion of the chord and to whether other notes have been added to the chord. It is important to remember that the figured bass is always referring back to the bass note of the chord, which is not always the root of the chord. A quick look at the key signature tells us that assuming we are in a major key, we are in the key of C major. If we look at the first example, we can see that the root has been highlighted in red. We have a C major chord in first inversion. The uppercase Roman numeral 1 is used to communicate that we have a chord built on the first scale degree that is a major chord, and the little number 6 is used to communicate that we have a chord in first inversion. Again, this refers to the fact that there are notes a 6 and a third above the bass note. However, the notation is shortened just to a 6. In the second example, the root is again highlighted in red. we can see that we have a chord built on the root of D that is in second inversion. The lowercase Roman numeral 2 is used to refer to the fact that we have a chord built on the second scale degree of C major, and it is minor. The 6/4 refers to the fact that it is a second inversion chord. If we look, we can see that there are notes a 6 and a 4th above the bass note. We are now going to take a moment to work through some example problems. The first thing that we need to do is to determine what key we are in. Assuming that we are in a major key, we can look at the two flats in the key signature and determine that we are in the key of B flat major. As you are getting started, you might find it helpful to write the actual scale out to help you figure out the scale degrees. If we look at the first example, we can see that we have a chord built on a B flat major in root position. The root of this chord is a B flat. So if we go over to our scale, we can see that B flat is the first scale degree. Using our chart or our knowledge of which chords are major and minor in a major key, or looking at the intervals within the chord, we can determine that this is a major chord. Therefore, we can mark it down with an uppercase Roman numeral 1. Because the chord is in root position, we could either mark it down with the numbers 5, 3 to represent that the notes are a fifth and a third above the bass note, or as is frequently done, we can just leave it as a 1 with no numbers. If we look at our second example, we can see that we have a first inversion chord built on the root of A. If we look at our chart, we can see that A is the 7th scale degree. Therefore, we can mark it down as a diminished 7th chord. Because the chord is in root position, we can mark that down with the figured bass number of 6 to represent the fact that the notes are a 6 and a third above the bass. Our third example is another first inversion chord, but this time built on the root E flat. If we look at our chart, we can see that E flat is the 4th scale degree. So we can mark it down with an uppercase Roman numeral 4 because it is a major chord. Because it is a first inversion chord, again, we can mark it down with the figured bass number 6. Our next chord is a second inversion chord built on the root of C. If we look over at our chart, we can see that C is the 2nd scale degree. Therefore, we can mark it down with a lowercase Roman numeral 2 to suggest that it is a minor chord. Because it is a second inversion chord, we can mark it down with the figured bass notation of 6/4. Our final example is a root position chord built on the root of F. Looking at our chart, we can see F is the 5th. And again, we know that this is a major chord, so we can mark it with an uppercase Roman numeral 5. Because it is in root position, we can leave the figured bass notation blank.